Hey gamers, Rick here for Game Trade Media. We're here with some of the creative minds behind the Eye of the Beholder, the Art of Dungeons and Dragons. We've got Brian and Kelley. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here at GenCon 2018, and you guys got some big things going on in regards to the Eye of the Beholder, yeah? So tell us a little bit what you got going on here, and then we're going to get into the meat.
You go ahead, Brian.
We are premiering Eye of the Beholder, the documentary, this weekend at GenCon. Saturday night, we're doing a screening, and excited to show it to everybody. Then we're also doing some screenings on Sunday. Okay. So big things.
So screenings, so these were ticketed events?
Yes,
yeah?
they're ticketed events.
Sold out, from what I understand.
Sold out. Two of the three screenings are sold out. The third one, I think, is half sold out. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think once people see the first two, see it the first time, they go out and spread the word.
They're going to get right back online.
Probably.
They're going to want to see it. They're going to want to see it again.
So I know it was a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But before we went to the Kickstarter platform, what was the genesis behind this whole project?
The story.
Well, we're gamers, and Kelley, myself, and our third partner Seth,
who's right over there, ladies and gentlemen, right off camera.
Hey, Seth. So we're all gamers. We love D&D in particular. I grew up loving the art. It was as much a part of the game for me as the game itself. You know, I'd buy these books and flip through them just to see the art. And as I got older, you know, I became a filmmaker, became a journalist, everything else. I'm always looking for projects that sort of engage me on a personal level. And I got back into D&D. I'd been playing for a while, and I started thinking about the art again and all the stuff that I love. And I looked around, I realized a lot of people talk about the game, the history of the game, the people involved in making it, Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, all these great people. They don't talk about the art very much, and they don't tell the story of the art. So I figured, okay, maybe that's something that I can explore. Maybe that's something I can do. And then my very next thought was, and it'd be really fun to do it with other filmmakers that I know, Seth and Kelley.
Right.
They made a movie of Dice and Men about gaming that I loved. Yes. I mean, part of the reason I got back into the game was because of that. So I thought, cool, I'm going to reach out to you guys and see what we can do.
Yeah, so we made of Dice and Men a dramedy about 6 role-playing gamers and what happens when one of them enlists to go to Iraq in 2006. And we made that in 2013. And I actually was a brand new D&D player during the making of Dice and Men. So I actually am not a long-time fan. I had been exposed to it a little bit, but through making the movie of Dice and Men is when I became more involved with D&D. But yeah, so we had made of Dice and Men, and I really liked the subject matter. And so when Brian approached us about possibly doing the documentary, we were all on board. Seth is a big gamer. And loves the artwork, so he was right on board with that.
Is that right, Seth? I hear you laughing off.
Well, the cool thing is, because I have a documentary background, and they have a narrative film background, and you know, it occurred to me that could only help. You know what I mean? That could only bring more to the thing.
The thing about documentary filmmaking is, even though it's not narrative, it's still storytelling. Okay. So the same skill applies. You're telling a story with nonfiction versus fiction. That's the only difference. Okay.
Now, when you guys are putting this all together and you're thinking about all the artists that have ever worked in that room, from Dungeon Magazine, Dragon Magazine, every module, every player's handbook and supplement that was ever created, that's a huge list of artists.
We interviewed 42 people for this documentary, and we could have interviewed 20 more.
Of course. Yeah. How did you pick those 42?
We started with, there's some prominent names in the history of D&D art.
What?
Yes. So, of course, in the 80s, dominated by Jeff Easley, Larry Elmore, Clyde Caldwell, Keith Parkinson, doing most of the product. But you also had the fantastic black and white artists who preceded them and worked through them. Diesel of Force, Jeff D.
Errol
Otis, Jim Rosloff, all these great artists. So they were kind of no-brainers on a certain level, people we wanted to reach out to. And then some others we wanted to reach out to that we couldn't get a hold of or whatever, who were working that time. Really great artists. So that was our sort of starting point, but we knew from the beginning we wanted this to be a continuum. We wanted to show people who are working on the game today, to show that D&D art is not just a static moment in time.
So we looked over 40 years of people working on it.
And evolving and growing at it, you know? And so we thought about, well, who's doing it today? And we reached out to them. And then people in the middle, Brom, Todd Lockwood, Tony DiTerlizzi. Again, sort of the names that people recognize, because we knew from the beginning we could not put in everyone. It'd be
course.
impossible. So we think, who are the people that fans love, that fans remember, that fans sort of have hanging on their walls.
Sure.
And that's who you reach out to. And then it grows from there, because then you're talking to someone and they talk about whoever and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that ties together, and you reach out. You do reach a point where you have to draw the line.
There was a definite line as the editor of the film where Brian wanted to do additional interviews, and I made him stop.
Yeah,
we
that's
had
what I was
to
gonna
stop
say.
at 40.
And she was convincing because the sword was really sharp.
Yeah.
And my neck skin is not very thick. And I was like, okay.
And we
yeah,
were
cool.
interviewing over a period of 3 years, and we had to stop at some point and begin editing and have it all in front of us. So we had to stop.
Absolutely.
So not everybody made it in.
Of
And I'm
course.
sure there'll be some people out there who'll be like, well, why didn't you have this person in? And it'll be just like we couldn't get everybody. And some people actually didn't want to be in the documentary, even though they were approached. So we've tried to get as many as possible. So.
And to be fair, Kelley, I came to her with one more towards the end, Tom Wam, who is one of the absolute earliest D&D artists.
Okay.
And I said, look, we can get this guy. I didn't know he was available. He's into it. And Kelley said, yeah, we got to. Even
course.
though
I'm a reasonable
slit that off,
person.
she's like, yeah, that's too cool. He drew the Beholder in the AD&D Monster Manual.
The
And we're
original
called
Beholder.
Eye of the
Yeah.
Beholder. Yeah. It wasn't the absolute
Not
first.
the original like on Greyhawk. That
All
was
right.
different.
That was a guy
Okay.
named Greg Bell.
Okay.
But the one everybody knows was drawn by Tom Wam. And Kelley was like, yeah, we got to go do that one.
Okay, makes sense.
So
let me ask
Thanks.
this: as far as being fans of the game,
Yeah.
in itself, Kelley, what was the artwork, the piece of art for D&D that you most spoke to you, or
Yeah,
you
you're thinking.
you truly gravitated towards?
I know what Brian's thinking, and him chuckling over there. I'm a huge Brahm fan.
Okay.
And so I knew Brahm's artwork separate from D&D
Right.
as well. And so when I realized we were going to be able to interview Brahm and for the documentary, I was very excited. And
Right.
it was a great interview.
That makes sense.
But yeah, his artwork is one of my favorites. But I mean, now that I have been so exposed and during the editing process, I had to discover so much artwork to include in the film. I've
Right.
now seen a crap ton of artwork that has come out of D&D, and I haven't been playing D&D for years, but I think I feel like I've seen it all now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a big Larry Elmore fan as well.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question here in a minute, but I also want that same question to you.
Sure.
What was the piece of artwork, because you have
Yeah.
been playing it forever?
That's tougher for me because
What was the piece that
He likes
yeah.
every-
You
he
were
likes
like-
everything.
oh my
No,
God,
okay.
this is my.
Well, the
my
irony,
thing.
so sort of quick answer before I actually really answer. The irony is the guy whose art I love, I don't want to say the most because I love all their art, but stuff I really loved, we didn't interview because he was a freelancer, and we realized early on some freelancers have a lot to contribute to the story, but some freelancers not really part of the bigger narrative.
Sure.
So a guy named Daniel Horn, who did a lot of Dragon magazine covers,
Yes, he did.
some of my all-time favorite pieces of D&D art. And it killed me that it just didn't make a lot of sense to interview him because we knew it would end up getting, a lot of it would get cut. I did get to meet him at a convention
Okay.
once, and I became the total like blubbering fanboy.
course.
I barely held it together. But otherwise, I'm a huge fan of Jeff Easley's art.
Oh, yeah.
Huge fan of Keith Parkinson's art.
Keith
Of course,
Parkinson's amazing.
Keith
too.
amazing,
passed
yes.
away a number of years ago. We interviewed his son.
Okay.
I love a lot of the earlier black and white artists. Jeff D, Diesel, Errol Otis is a huge part of my childhood. Meeting him was a thrill. Jim Rosloff.
Okay.
He was a big artist in the 70s and 80s. He passed away, so we couldn't interview him. But his art, I love Jim's art.
Okay.
I was very lucky to have become friendly with his wife before she passed away. And just being able to talk to her about Jim's process. She was an artist herself. So that's a tough question, man.
Yeah, it is a tough
I hate
question.
that
There's so
question.
much good.
So
Screw you and your questions.
I apologize.
That's okay.
but I want to tell you my piece to that
Please.
as well, because when you hit the Kickstarter, and as soon as I saw it post, Seth put it up there, I was like, I think I'm like number 3
Probably. Yeah.
Nice.
on that. But it was like, so when I was in 9th grade, my family got kind of torn apart, not by wolves like everybody would like to think, but I got put in foster care. I had already had an exposure to Dungeons and Dragons and everything with my cousin. He'd shown me how to play and everything, but when I got put in foster care, I was in a youth home for a year, and it sucked. And I went to a hobby shop and I went to this hobby shop and I saw Dragons of Autumn Twilight.
Nice.
And I picked up that piece,
Larry
Elmore, and I was just like, what is this? This is amazing. And ever since then, you can just know it's Larry's work when you see it.
Of course, yeah.
The female form that he does is it's always his wife. Yes.
Yes, we know.
Yep.
We found that out from him.
Is amazing, and so Larry Elmore is like my foster dad. And I told him this story. I met him for the first time about 5 years ago at DragonCon. And I went up there and I'm like,
You're a mess.
I was a mess.
Yeah. We've all been there, man. We've all been there.
Everything he had on the table.
Right.
And but since then, it's like every time, Larry's such a nice guy.
He is.
Insanely
so
nice.
I just saw him yesterday.
So I told him, I was like, Larry, you saved my life. I got put in this position, and here we are. And when you think about it, the art of D&D saved my life.
Where were you when we were making this movie, man?
I know. Where was I? I'm right here. I'm right here now.
Larry's son gave that to me yesterday. You're invited.
Oh.
Don't say that on.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
Yes.
But yeah,
It's secret.
so it was. So that's the piece, the Dragons of Autumn Twilight, that is my iconic piece that brought me in. But and my piece that I own, I got the reproduction is again Larry Elmore, is the red box that wasn't.
Yes, we have that in the film.
So good.
So
good.
Seth and I were shooting in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and we got in touch with Frank Menser, who was the editor of the Red Box and the whole BECMI set of box sets.
Right.
And he said, yeah, come on over. We weren't going to do a shoot with him, but he said, just come over. I'll chat with you guys, show you some of the stuff I have. I have some old art. And this was before they announced to the world that art was there and he was making prints with Larry.
Right.
And he pulls out this giant pile of stuff and starts flipping through it. And first, it's old GenCon posters. And Seth and I are like, oh, that's cool. It's interesting. And then it's some old flyers. We're like, oh, that's cool. Then he pulls one back, and it's this weird alternate universe, but we're like, that's the Red Box cover. There's a giant dragon, and it's leaping out at you, and there are players everywhere. And we're like, but there's too many players. And he said, that's Larry's original sketch before we refined it.
Right.
And Seth and I were like, okay, we need to have a conversation.
Yes.
And eventually what we did was a friend of ours who lives out there, we sent him over to take photos of all that stuff. Not only that, but also preliminary drawings for the other sets, the Expert Companions, Mortals, BEC.
The Masters.
Masters. He had a bunch of them. And soon after, he posted, I'm working with Larry. We're going to release these as prints. But we saw those things, and our jaws just hit the floor.
I'm sure.
It was... didn't even know what to
iconic.
think. It was amazing.
Yeah, iconic work. Now, you guys had to have had some hurdles. 3 years of filming, logistically having to put all this together. What were some of the, hurdles can be a challenge that can be depressing, but some of them can be revealing and fun.
I don't think we had any, like, oh my God, we're going to be derailed types of hurdles.
No, there was no moments during the filming that was, a hurdle per se at all. I mean, other than, what was that?
Raid or raid failure.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was,
I mean,
I don't even consider that part of the film. That's just something that happened. I had a backup issue with our footage, but it was recovered.
There are challenges. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's challenges. So, like, Seth and I got to a shoot in Colorado, and we were shooting in a bar that was a gamer bar.
Nice.
And we're there, and we have the interview subjects, and we're waiting out front. They're going to open the bar early for us. Everything's great. They never show.
Oh.
And we call the guy. He's not picking up. We checked in like a few days earlier. Everything was cool. So we had to move the whole thing. But that's not like a...
Yeah, nothing crazy.
It's like,
Sure.
you know.
But as far as the big hurdle was the editing of the film.
Timeline that we gave ourselves.
The timeline we gave ourselves. So I didn't start really editing until February of this year. But we were also doing the Kickstarter at the same time. So it was a lot of work going on at the same time. So the bulk of the editing happened in the last few months.
Sure.
Just pretty compressed for
Of course.
And we gave ourselves a deadline of GenCon. We want to premiere it at GenCon, and we had to have a rough cut done by mid-April in order to get into the film festival at GenCon. So I had basically 2 months to do a rough cut, and I did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
And
cut down. It was how many hours we cut down?
It was, oh God, it was.
And we cut down
70. 70 hours of footage.
Something like
Wow.
70
70
something
hours
hours.
to- 70
72
hours-
because of Tom Wom.
Yeah.
Because the last thing.
70 hours of footage down to, or maybe 60 something hours of footage down to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it was the biggest challenge I've had to date,
Is the editing.
editing wise.
It
Sure.
was. Look, we all put in a ton of work.
Of course. I mean,
But
you are a
I'll-
three-person
but here's
crew
the thing.
here.
Honestly, having edited a documentary myself and knowing how long that took me, watching Kelley crank out even that rough, like, let's just get something on the screen
Sure.
that is reasonably narrative, watching that happen blew my mind.
Right.
And the fact that it was actually, granted, it was like long and a little clunky, but it
Right.
was still watchable and like actually pretty interesting for a rough cut if you're into this stuff. Was sort of amazing to me.
Right.
And
It's for me as an editor, even though I do narrative stuff too, I have discovered I enjoy the documentary editing or nonfiction editing
Sure.
process a lot more because it's more creative than it is with narrative.
Right.
Because you're creating a story from scratch,
Right.
as opposed to a narrative where you have a script to follow and you have so many takes that you did of a scene. And so the creativity editing a narrative film is less than you have
Right.
for a documentary. And
there's a
so
lot-
that's
Wow.
what I enjoy about it.
but there's a lot more of that like staring at the blank screen.
Oh.
Where do I start?
Oh.
What do I do?
No,
Sure.
you have to be organized and methodical, and I
But
try
even
to
from
be
the creative point, like
Yeah.
like how like we would have a lot of conversations. So
Sure.
because they're in DC,
Yep.
and I'm in New York, and a lot of the way it would work, we'd talk ahead of time, like what do we want to do? Okay, and then Kelley would sit down and spend a few weeks like putting stuff together, and then we'd talk about it. And along the way, maybe she'd give me a call, be like, I'm working on this thing. What do you think we should do? Like. How important is this, or how important is that, or
Right.
I got these two
'Cause
ideas.
Brian
What do you
provided
like?
the historical context that
Sure.
I was missing because
Okay.
I wasn't
Right.
as familiar with the
Okay.
source material.
But also like bouncing ideas off and whatever. And then I'd see a cut and I'd send her my thoughts. But I remember a lot of it is just like you saying like the hardest part is getting that initial narrative idea for this section rolling. And then from there, you kind of build on it and go with it.
You basically start with a bunch of storylines,
Right.
mini storylines. Like, okay, here's the Dragonlance storyline. Here's the one about Elmore. Here's the one about Clyde Caldwell. You know,
Right.
we divide it into little tiny pieces, flesh the tiny pieces out. Then you take the tiny pieces and put them into bigger pieces.
Right.
And you have to figure out how
and then
those go
forward-
together.
Right. So that's kind of the process.
It's the ultimate.
And that was a lot of
form
our
Tetris.
conversations. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Brian, I have these 8 pieces. What do we,
Right.
what
Right.
fits? And it's like, okay, well, what if we do this? Okay, that kind of worked. It's this weird back and forth.
Sure.
It's-
Yeah, and we had some in-person sessions.
Yeah.
So we had a couple where Brian came down to DC and sat over my shoulder, and we went through the entire thing,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
minute
Yeah.
by minute.
Okay.
So.
And the nice thing is, on one hand, Kelley knows it intimately.
Oh my God, I've
'cause
seen this
she's
film so
watched
many
it a million times.
I'm tired of watching the film at this point.
Wow.
And then I get down there and I haven't seen it too much yet. So
He
when
brings
you
fresh
have,
eyes.
Yeah,
Right, of course.
And a certain coldness to the process in the sense that you
He's
become a little
brutal.
invested in what you've done,
Yeah.
if only because you've spent X hours doing it and you're
Right.
like, I just don't want to change it.
Right.
And I'll be like, we have to flip that.
Right.
You know, and that's the worst because I'm an editor as well, not as good as Kelley, but I'm an editor as well. And even when you've worked on something for just a day, when your producer comes by, it's like, we got to flip those two things. You're like, no, it's perfect the way it is. Leave it alone. It's like, no. And then you do it. You're like,
Fine.
okay,
We
fine,
call
I
it
guess that
killing
works.
babies.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Cutting
there
stuff.
wasn't too many babies killed during this
No, 'cause you
process.
were tight in the edit.
Yeah,
Like,
it was.
you-
It was
you
a
were pretty.
So,
enough
but there was a
conversations.
couple
Sure.
that had to be sacrificed, and
Okay.
and that's you just got to get over
You
it.
gotta
It's
get
got to
over it,
happen.
yeah.
She had to
So.
kill a Brom section.
I had
like
to
a
kill. I had
Brom
to
bite.
kill
That
Oh, they
was.
had
a
to
Brom
been-
part.
I
We
said
ca-
it to her. I was like, okay.
That's where you're like, Seth, why are you crying?
I've gotta- I'm, like,
Kelley's the
moving
editor
back
and
in the
she will
chair.
not
I'm like,
cry.
Kelley,
I must cry for her.
I have a note. We need to cut something.
Yeah,
That
it was
Brom
fine.
line.
I actually
Yeah,
was
you
fine
were.
with it.
Yeah, you were
Okay.
like, yeah, that's
because,
gotta go.
Yeah, it ended up being just fine.
I was
so.
worried she'd just
Okay.
be like, not Brom, not my boyfriend.
No. So
Brom's gonna watch.
the
this and be
Kickstarter
like,
has been
"Ugh."
completed. You guys have gotten your knee deep, neck deep in adding the completion process for getting it out
Forehead
to,
deep. I mean,
all to your Kickstarter backers.
Yep.
yeah.
Now beyond that, where do you guys see this going? What is the big thing you want to have the audience take from this?
Oh.
If they've seen it.
I mean, for me, what my hope, like on a very surface level, I hope people walk away saying like, "Oh, I understand this better. I understand where this art came from better, and I know who these people are a little better."
Okay.
But I think on another level, there's this hope that people will see it, and it'll kind of rekindle their love of this stuff.
Sure.
The love never goes away, I don't think. I think
Right.
you get away from your hobby or from your art or from whatever, but it's always lingering in there.
Sure.
And when you see something like this, I know for me, I've been passionate about it from the beginning, but you talk to these people or you see this art or flipping through the art that you found for the editing, even me, where it never died down that much, there's a little bit of flair, even more
Sure.
love. And I hope that when people see this, they watch it and walk out going like, yeah, like, okay, they don't want to run out and buy all this stuff.
Sure.
But they remember it, and it makes them feel good, and
Right.
it brings back fond memories of them for them.
For me, as somebody who wasn't historically connected to the art because I didn't play it growing up, things like that, I knew of the art and I liked it, but I was not, a big giant fan of it. But now that I've literally stared at every piece of D&D art ever made over and over again, I am now a fan of it.
Of course.
And I can see the potential in it, and I can see the storytelling aspect of the artwork, and I appreciate it now. That's what I hope people who are D&D player, maybe newer D&D players,
Right.
they'll come off with a new appreciation for what's being put in front of them.
I love it.
And they'll learn about some of the artists, like
Oh yeah,
especially
the artists
Yeah,
and the artists
of
we've
course.
met have been amazing making the film.
Right.
We love they're our
And that
friends
leads
now.
that leads me into my final question.
Sure.
Because you are a fan and you're a new fan, let's say a newish fan.
Yeah.
You're not. 5-7 years
Yeah.
is not really all that new.
Yeah.
Everybody has their moment, their fan moment. Because if you're going to sit down with someone across the seat from you that you have been like, I love your work, I've been a fan of it forever, and you have that geek out moment, what was yours?
What was yours, Brian?
I mean, literally everyone. I mean, I was sitting across the camera from Errol Otis. You know what I mean?
We had
I
lunch
mean,
with Jeff Easley.
yeah,
like
it's
just
okay. So here's there are two moments for me. There are two moments for me that stand out because they're also, you have to remember, they're also very cool people.
Of course.
They're
yes.
super friendly and super welcoming, and they're not like weird or anything. So it very quickly becomes like, hey, we're all into the same stuff. But
Right.
Jeff Easley, there are two moments that kind of blew my mind. One, we met him for the first time at a convention called LuxCon, which is
Okay.
like a big art show focusing on fantasy art, imaginative realism.
That's in
It's
PA?
Pennsylvania, yep. And we were all there, and we were there to kind of meet some of these people and check out the art and do some shooting and whatever. And we walk up, and we see there's Jeff Easley at a table, and he's sitting there. And we'd never met him before, knew nothing about him. So we walk over, and we're like, okay, we should go talk to him. And they're like, Brian, go talk to him. I'm like, okay, I'll go talk to him. So I go over, and Jeff is the quietest guy on the planet.
Right.
He does not say very much. So Larry Elmore is a talker. He
Yes.
goes, and he's great, tells great stories. Jeff just sits there. Very quiet. And you walk up to him and say, hey, Mr. Easley, I just want to let you know I'm a huge fan of your work. Thank you. Thank you. So we're making this documentary, blah, 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 blah. He said, sounds cool. And we were really hoping you'd be in it. We thought it'd be really cool. Sure. But that's all he says.
Right.
So you don't know what he's really thinking. So you keep talking just to fill the empty air.
Right.
And eventually you run out of things to say that are normal. So you start babbling.
Of
And then
course.
you go past babbling into irrational spouting of sounds and speaking in tongues. And the whole time he's just sitting there. And then you start thinking, well, I've screwed this up because I've gone off the rails. So that was my first meeting with Jeff. The second one, a few years later, we'd become friendlier at this point. I met him a few times. I was at North Texas Role-Playing Convention, NTRG, in Dallas. And I'm talking to Jeff, and I'm friendly at this point with Jeff, with Diesel LaForce.
Okay.
And Diesel's there, and we're all going to go get some lunch. And Jeff's like, oh, what are you guys up to? And I'm like, well, Diesel and I are going to go grab some lunch. And Jeff Easley asks me, ooh, can I join you? And I'm thinking to myself, Jeff Easley just asked me if he can join us for lunch.
Yeah.
You know Kermit, how he does the,
Of course.
That's what my brain was doing.
Oh, I
Because
love
I
it.
couldn't believe it. Because I was like, you're Jeff freaking Easley.
Yeah.
you can join me for anything, whatever. I got to take a shower. You want to join? Yeah, fine, hang out. I don't care. You're Jeff Easley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that blew my mind.
that
blew my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, right. He'd be like, okay. So that for me, I think. The last one. Sorry. We commissioned Jeff Easley to do T-shirts for our Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, nice.
If you'd told me as a kid that I would be commissioning art that we were going to do stuff with from Jeff Easley,
right.
Never would have believed you. Blown my mind.
Yeah, you said, get out.
Those
Get out of my house, you
moments
freak.
really
Don't tell me
just
these
my
things.
brain exploded.
That's amazing.
Oh, mine is just a repeat from earlier. So I got to meet Brom and see where Brom lived in his skull collection and see some artwork up close that he had. And so I was thrilled to meet him there. And he actually drew a little piece of artwork for us while we were there, and we have that framed in our house.
That is amazing. Yeah, and you can't go wrong. Meeting your idols and the glass frame that you put them in doesn't get shattered.
That's important. I mean, they all were cool.
Yeah.
We didn't meet
Everybody
anyone
was
where
cool.
we were like, oh God, way to ruin it.
No, they were all good.
So after all the Kickstarter backers get their rewards,
Which we still have to make.
Right.
Yes.
What is the how is it going to hit the masses that missed out on Kickstarter? And when might that, as a time frame, be
Our
available?
time frame is ideally end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're exploring, all of our options as far as distribution goes.
Sure.
The Kickstarter backers will get some kind of electronic distribution, but as far as where we're pursuing it, we'll be going for all the routes.
Of course.
Amazon Primes, the
Yeah. I mean, it'll definitely be DVD and Blu-ray.
Of course.
We'll make those and we'll sell those through Amazon.
Yeah.
It's easy to do, and it's
so
great.
physical media, of course. But then
Absolutely.
as far as the online distribution, we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming up here today and telling us all about the project and giving us so much cool insight as to the process that you guys have had to endure and enjoy.
Endure and enjoy. That's
right.
a perfect phrase.
That's our next T-shirt.
Endure and enjoy.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you guys again in front of our cameras talking about the next big project that might come down the pipe. I'm sure there's more coming down. We'll talk about it another time.
Okay, great.
All
Thank
right?
you so much
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Absolutely. For all you out there that have just joined us and watched this amazing little interview and video, make sure you guys keep your eyes out for Eye of the Beholder, The Art of Dungeons & Dragons. There is a Facebook page, correct?
Yep.
There is?
Yep.
That you can follow. So when it is available for you who missed the Kickstarter, you can pick it up. All right. I'm Rick. This is Game Trade Media, and we'll see you at the game store.
Thanks for watching Game Trade Media. Make sure to leave us a like and click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new content.